Does the name Gordon Freeman ring a bell?
Freeman, the silent protagonist of the seminal Half-Life series.
Yep, that's him. As memorable as Gordon's journey has been, his silence plays a pivotal role.
True, his silence effectively represents us players, creating an emotional bond through the gameplay.
The novel approach to character design with Freeman often feels like a masterclass in creating emotional resonance.
Indeed, the essence of Half-Life's narrative lies in Freeman's highs and lows.
Right, his journey is deeply linked to our own gaming journey. Remembering the alien onslaught on Black Mesa, physicists around you being mutated really gives you the shivers.
It does, and that feeling of immersion tops with the gravity gun. Wielding that went beyond just gameplay, it felt transformative and personal.
Can't argue with that. Stay tuned, folks, as we dive deep into this saga of Gordon Freeman and the beloved universe of Half-Life. Gordon Freeman, silent and faceless hero, yet unforgettable. What makes him resonate with gamers so much?
I always explore it from a psychological perspective, Andrew. Freeman embodies the concept of the silent protagonist, impressionable, adaptable, and resilient.
That's an intriguing aspect.
Undoubtedly. He's really a blank canvas. As players, we project our own thoughts and attitudes onto him. We become Freeman. This actually enhances the gaming experience.
Does that make us more receptive to the storyline, to the changes he undergoes?
Yes. Consider this. As Gordon evolves, so do we. The trials he faces effectively become our own challenges. This emotional transference deepens our engagement and alters our perspective as players.
So you're saying we're not just observing Freeman's transformation, we're part of it.
Exactly, Andrew. It's this fusion of player and character that makes Half-Life's narrative so immersive and appealing.
And yet, aside from a few scripted actions, Freeman remains largely inexpressive, letting us fill in the gaps.
Indeed. Conventional storytelling might rely on character dialogue or overt emotional cues. Half-Life, however, places immense faith in its players, asking them to don the suit of Freeman, to read between the lines and truly immerse themselves in this incredible journey. It's as if we're students and the game is a teacher, letting us learn as we move forward.
I imagine it certainly helps forge a unique bond between the game and its players.
Certainly. And the memories created along the journey, they leave an indelible mark on the players. It's just like that thrill of winning the chess championship you still carry with you, right?
Absolutely. This perception certainly adds a new depth to my experience with Freeman and the Half-Life series.
And that, listeners, is the magic of gaming narratives like Half-Life. They allow us to step into another world, to face challenges and triumph. We don't just play Gordon Freeman, we become him. And in doing so, we also transform and evolve.
So let's go deeper into this labyrinth of chaos and discovery. Black Mesa, the place where it all began.
Black Mesa. The very hub of the story. The mysterious research facility that caters to the unfolding of most of Half-Life's narrative.
Without revealing obvious spoilers, from the moment Gordon dons his HEV suit, Black Mesa sets the stage for every heart-stopping moment, gruesome discovery, and all the eerie silences in between.
Exactly. It's a place that's brimming with unspoken stories. It's all coded into the game's environment. A montage of scattered reports, flickering computers, and abandoned laboratories.
And each of these elements subtly coexist, to harmonically serve the narrative. I mean, think about the resonance cascade. It wasn't a quick cut scene, but an experience.
Undeniably, and while the catastrophe unfolds, the game throws us right into the center of it all. Gordon, and effectively the players, are forced to navigate the aftermath, witnessing the chaos firsthand.
Which brings us to an interesting point. Mia, how does this environmental storytelling affect players' emotional connection with the game? You, being a psychology professor, can provide an exciting insight.
Well, Andrew, it's about active involvement. Traditional storytelling uses dialogue or character expressions to trigger empathy. But Half-Life forces players to infer events from their surroundings, creating a highly engaging and personalized experience.
The mystery it creates must exhilarate the players, and gripping them with anticipation for what's to come.
Precisely. The narrative forces players to pay attention, to interpret every tiny detail. That's how Black Mesa becomes more than just a location. It becomes part of players' journey, their fight for survival.
Experiencing a world through gaming, it's like the pages of a book coming to life, and Black Mesa, the environment and everything else, is testament to that.
Indeed, the role Black Mesa plays in the narrative of Half-Life can't be overstated. It's what pushes Gordon, and by extension, the players to step into the unknown, take actions, and ultimately define themselves.
Speaking of Gordon Freeman's journey through Black Mesa, it left us with some tantalizing loose threads, didn't it?
Absolutely, it did. One of the most fascinating aspects of Half-Life's narrative was its deliberate ambiguity.
See, that's what I enjoyed the most. The mystery surrounding Freeman's journey, the questions left unanswered, they instigate curiosity to learn more. I remember wondering, who are the Vortigaunts really? What is the ultimate agenda of the G-Man?
Yes, indeed. The speculation surrounding these unresolved narrative threads fuels the interest of players. It provides the audience with room to theorize and predict. In some ways, it encourages them to participate in the narrative process.
And it's not just the big questions. Even the small details like the sudden radio transmissions, the cryptic symbolisms, or the cryptic graffiti on walls, everything felt like they were hinting towards something more, something bigger.
Right. Another aspect I find interesting is the character of Alex Vance. Throughout the series, her relationship with Gordon takes center stage, but there's always been this unspoken ambiguity about their bond.
Indeed, I remember fans debating about their relationship. Was it friendship, brotherhood, or something more? It's the beauty of Half-Life. All these uncertainties keep players on the edge, urging them to find answers in the next release. Jumping back to the narrative element of Half-Life, have you noticed its environmental storytelling?
Oh, certainly. For the uninitiated, environmental storytelling refers to the use of a game's world and environment to convey vital parts of the narrative. You must have stumbled across numerous instances in Half-Life that does just that.
Yes, like those cryptic graffitis or sudden radio transmissions you mentioned earlier. They were not just details, but narrative elements subtly embedded within the environment. I remember a particular scene where a scientist's messages on the wall revealed a prior experiment gone wrong. It wasn't explicitly spelled out, but the environment told the story.
Exactly. And remember the first time we see a head crab? It's not through a cutscene, but in the midst of you figuring out a physics puzzle. The gameplay and environment work together in narrative delivery. Beyond pure audiovisual details, Half-Life's environmental storytelling includes countless gameplay mechanics, items, and even the arrangement of enemies.
Yes, those elements collectively contribute towards an authentic gaming experience. For instance, exploring Black Mesa's research facility felt more like living through a moment in a living, breathing world rather than typical map exploration.
Very true. And it's not just about creating suspense or curiosity, but also about grounding the narrative and character development in the game's reality. Take Alex Vance, for example. Her character development mirrors the physical journey of the player, reinforcing our empathy and connection with her.
I can't help but imagine how Half-Life would have felt had it not been for such intricate environmental storytelling. Would Gordon Freeman's character have evoked such profound resonance? Would the narrative grip us as powerfully?
Perhaps, perhaps not. Essentially, this is Half-Life's unique storytelling power. By marrying the game mechanics with the environment narrative, it ensured every half-step forward felt meaningful. Is it a wonder, then, that Half-Life continues to hold such sway over our hearts? This brings us to Half-Life's innovative gameplay mechanics. Remember the physics-based puzzles, Andrew?
Those were a true paradigm shift. In most games, physics was a mere aesthetic element meant to lend realism. Half-Life, however, incorporated it into gameplay, making puzzles an integral part of the narrative. Specifically, the puzzles required players to interact with the environment in ways that were governed by the game's physics engine. It offered quite the mental exercise, didn't it?
Absolutely, and it's not limited to just mental exercise. The physical maneuvering of the character in solving those puzzles often challenged the player's dexterity as well. It was a fine blend of logical thinking and physical skill. I remember the chapter in Half-Life 2 Root Canal where players had to stack cinder blocks onto a makeshift seesaw ramp to proceed. That was foreign in gaming at the time.
Not just foreign, it was genius. The same physics engine also allowed for realistic interactions between objects, characters, and the environment. Characters would react to the player's actions in different ways depending on their physical state and position. This degree of interaction shifted gaming from the mundane button mashing to a more thoughtful process.
Couldn't agree more. These innovations compelled players to think beyond typical game mechanics, luring us into a deeper engagement with not only the virtual world of Half-Life, but our own worlds as well.
What do you think? Was Half-Life's marriage of complex physics and realistic mechanics ahead of its time? Or was it simply a happy coincidence that allowed gameplay to evolve?
I'd say it was both a product of its time and a catalyst for change, considering the leaps in technological design and the growing need for realism in games. Half-Life's gameplay innovations cemented its place as a genre-defining milestone. So, Andrew, we've covered the physics-based puzzles. Now, what are your thoughts on the interactive environment of Half-Life?
The interactive environment was, in simple terms, a game changer. Innovation wasn't relegated just to the puzzles or mechanics, but stretched into the environment itself. In Half-Life, every corridor of Black Mesa wasn't just a set dressing, but an integral part of the storytelling.
Interesting. Can you elaborate on that?
Certainly. Remember the tram ride in Half-Life? As you're being transported through the facility, it's not just about admiring the graphical fidelity. It's more about painting a picture of the world you're about to step into. And it's all done without a single line of dialogue. You glean details about this underground labyrinth, the scientists scurrying around, the industrial operations, and the impending sense of unease.
Without a doubt, the way Half-Life used the environment as a narrative tool was innovative.
And it's not just about narrative, Mia. The environment was interactive. Windows could be shattered, boxes could be tipped over, computer screens sparked after shooting them. This interaction was a brilliant jab at traditional games where environments were static.
Andrew, how would you say these interactive environments influence player connection to the Half-Life universe?
An environment that responds to a player's actions allows for a stronger immersion in the world. It makes the world feel alive, responsive, and ultimately real. As a player, it made me feel like my actions had impact, like I was a part of this universe. It made me care for it, love it, and fear it. In short, it made Half-Life universally relatable.
Andrew, let's talk about the zero-point energy field manipulator, or as the community fondly calls it, the gravity gun. How has it influenced the gameplay?
The gravity gun, one of my favorite tools in the Half-Life arsenal. The gravity gun injected a fresh novelty into the mechanics of PC games as we knew them, by enabling players to manipulate and move objects in the environment with a kind of kinetic energy. It flipped traditional combat mechanics on their head.
Can you recall any instances that highlight this revolution?
One moment that really ticks off is that Ravenholm sequence. You know, when you're faced with hordes of those weird headcrab zombies, and your main arsenal is the gravity gun and a bunch of hazardous objects sprinkled across the scene. Swinging saw blades, flammable cans, anything goes. This gravitational interaction with the environment turned commonplace objects into deadly projectiles.
A perfect example of using interactive gameplay to raise the stakes. How did this freedom to experiment impact the player experience?
The gravity gun offered players a new layer of strategic depth and creativity in navigating combats. Winning wasn't about pulling the most efficient gun out of your backpack anymore. It was about using your wits, your environment. This addition turned ordinary combats into memorable experiences and made players think twice about what they ignored as background elements.
So ultimately, the gravity gun took the interactivity of Half-Life's environment to a whole new level, making everything a part of the game. Right, Andrew?
Exactly, Mia. The gravity gun symbolizes not just one of Half-Life's innovative mechanics, but also reinforces the interactive framework of the game itself. In a way, this tool transformed the very essence of how players interact with the in-game universe and shapes player experiences. Moving on to some of the factors that contribute to Half-Life's complex and challenging gameplay, let's start with power-ups. The game doesn't spoon-feed players, It subtly incentivizes exploration by placing weapons and ammo strategically within the environment. One effectively learns about power-ups by interacting with the world around them.
That definitely heightened the suspense and uncertainty, didn't it? And the AI behavior, how does that factor in?
The non-playable characters in Half-Life have a knack for surprising you. They're unpredictable, and their reactions create a sense of realism that hooks the players. Combined soldiers, for instance, don't simply stand still and shoot. They divide, try to outflank and disorient you. This behavior makes every encounter unique, and you can't just rely on muscle memory or a set pattern to beat them. You need to be adaptable and on your toes all the time.
Character leveling in Half-Life isn't a straightforward progression system often seen in RPGs, is it? My understanding is that it's more of an incremental empowerment as players become more comfortable with the game mechanics. Is that accurate?
Yes, in true Half-Life fashion, character leveling isn't a numerical status that unlocks after killing a certain amount of enemies or reaching a checkpoint. Rather, you are gradually introduced to new weapons and mechanics. Your skills grow organically as you overcome in-game obstacles and combat challenges. It's a design approach that respects and engages the players, asking them to learn and adapt rather than reach a set score.
Andrew, you've been talking quite a bit about the gameplay mechanics and how it influences player experience in Half-Life. But let's flip the script a bit and look at the man behind the crowbar, our protagonist, Gordon Freeman. From a psychological perspective, what can you tell us about his character?
Mia, I'm glad you asked because I consider Gordon Freeman to be one of the most compelling characters in gaming history, despite his silence. You're thrown into his shoes in the middle of an alien invasion without a clue about who he is. He's a theoretical physicist, not a soldier. His response to the chaos around him is incredibly captivating to observe. It's a masterfully done illusion of character development wherein the player fills in the blank spaces with their own interpretations.
What's really intriguing is how this silent protagonist influences not just the game, but also its players. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, Freeman's silence is an ingenious method of character building. In most games, players passively watch the character's growth. But with Freeman, it encourages players to assume his role more deeply, aligning their actions with his and experiencing a more immersive sort of storytelling. This silent influence echoes in the heart of every Half-Life player, elevating the game to more than just an interactive experience.
Something tells me, though, that Freeman's legacy extends well beyond the game's community. Can you enlighten us on that?
Absolutely, Mia. Freeman's character design has permeated into wider aspects of popular culture. His silent heroism and everyman qualities make him an accessible and recognizable figure, even to those not involved in the gaming culture. His influence and impact manifest in other media forms, from film references to graphic novels, asserting a footprint that reaches far beyond the confines of Half-Life's universe. Mia, Freeman's story wouldn't be as intricate if it wasn't for the bundle of well-designed supporting characters that fuels his mission. What's your take on them?
Well, Andrew, supporting characters in Half-Life like Barney, Alex, and Eli have their own unique narratives and arcs. They're not just there for assistance, they bring a depth to the story, enhancing Freeman's narrative and our emotional investment in the game. Take Barney, for instance. Starting as a security guard at Black Mesa, he eventually becomes Freeman's ally, assisting him throughout the series.
Absolutely. Barney represents the everyman, plunged into the same chaos as Freeman, but with a different outcome and perspective. His forced transformation from a security guard to a fighter adds a human dimension to the game. We empathize with him, and it boosts our connection to the entire series.
There's also Alex Vance, Andrew. She's an interesting character. As a leading woman, she breaks away from the stereotypical damsel in distress role, demonstrating courage and resilience. Alex stands shoulder to shoulder with Freeman, proving herself indispensable in the game's progress.
Agree, Mia. Alex brings an element of realism to the game, and it's refreshing to see a capable and complex female character in a game like Half-Life. She acts as a tether to the audience's realities, further immersing us in the game. It's a testament to the well-thought-out character development that the team at Valve put in the game.
Stepping aside from these humans' characters, we can't have this conversation without discussing the Vortigaunts. These former enemies turned allies add an extraterrestrial perspective to the narrative, allowing us to appreciate the wider scope of the game's universe.
Their transformation from enslaved aliens to valuable allies is unique, and it illustrates the narrative depth of Half-Life. The Vortigaunts highlight that the real enemy isn't the one who looks different, but the one who seeks to dominate others against their will, like the Combine series. Mia, talk about shrouded in mystery. Let's bring up the character everyone loves to speculate about, the G-Man.
Oh, the G-Man. He's a conundrum wrapped in a mystery, isn't he? Crucial yet incomprehensible, menacing yet alluring, serving as a sort of omniscient puppet master of the Half-Life universe. It's unclear who or what he represents, which makes his role even more intriguing.
Indeed, shrouded in an aura of enigmatic power. There's hardly a scene involving him which doesn't give us chills. Prepare for unforeseen consequences. His dialogues are so cryptic, they leave us guessing, don't they?
With his peculiar speech pattern and cryptic messages, it always feels like he's overlooking Freeman and the game's events. There's a sense of foreboding with his presence. It's like he knows something the players and the characters in the game don't. Adds a whole another layer of complexity to the game's narrative.
Absolutely. The enigmatic G-Man is not only central to the narrative, but also prompts so much speculation within the gaming community. I think he is a testament to the Half-Life's narrative depth and complexity. Don't you think, Mia?
Definitely, Andrew. In my opinion, characters like the G-Man elevate Half-Life from just another first-person shooter to a nuanced, deeply engaging narrative experience.
It's amazing how a character who says so little can mean so much, right? How does psychology interpret this, Mia?
Well, the human mind loves a mystery, Andrew. We are naturally drawn to the unexplained and enigmatic because it stimulates our curiosity and imagination. That's exactly what the G-Man does. His elusive appeal keeps us hooked, wondering what he knows, who he is.
Brilliantly said, Mia. Despite his limited appearances, the G-Man's impact on the Half-Life narrative is astounding. It shows the genius of Valve's character design and how effectively they've used these characters to build a captivating gaming universe. Mia, the Half-Life series had a major influence in creating an active gaming community. Would you agree?
Andrew, absolutely. The Half-Life series, beyond being an iconic game series, was a spark that ignited a gaming community that has truly stood the test of time. The dynamics of this community, I believe, completely redefined the broader gaming world.
In my experience, the community was really a space for enthusiasts to connect, driven by a shared admiration for the game. But I'm curious, Mia, how did the community evolve over the years from a psychological perspective?
Great question, Andrew. Gaming communities like that of Half-Life often start with enthusiasts discussing gameplay and sharing tips. Over time, it solidifies into a socio-cultural entity. We see bonds of shared experiences forming over years of gameplay. Players start identifying as a group, which impacts not just their gaming life, but their identity as well. They become contributors to the gaming culture rather than mere consumers.
That's a fascinating point, Mia. The interaction between the gaming community and the game's content itself is something worth looking into.
Undoubtedly, Andrew. That interaction often gives rise to modding communities. They're groups of talented individuals who enhance, alter, or create content for games. Speaking of which, Half-Life's modding community was nothing short of revolutionary, was it not?
Without a doubt, Mia. Half-Life's modding community was a force to be reckoned with. They enhanced the longevity of the series by producing entirely new, fan-made chapters and scenarios. Honestly, some mods were so well crafted that they felt more like official expansions rather than fan-made content.
And it's incredible that the developers embraced this, Andrew. The support for modding showed that they acknowledged the creativity and passion of the community. It made the players feel respected and heard.
Mia, let's delve into some of the popular fan theories and controversies. I remember a particularly interesting one revolving around Gordon Freeman himself. Do you recall it?
You might be referring to the theory suggesting Gordon Freeman's role is merely a pawn in the orchestration of G-Man and his superiors. It's fascinating how players interpret the narrative, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. Player interpretations like these tell us a lot about how engaged they are with the storyline. It aids in enriching the game's larger narrative universe. But Mia, given your expansive knowledge of video game culture, could you walk us through any controversies the series faced?
Of course, Andrew. One notable controversy was the delay in the release of Half-Life 2. The gap amplified anticipation among fans. Although delays are not uncommon in the gaming world, this specific delay gave rise to numerous speculations and disputes within the community.
That's right. The wait was well rewarded, though, with Half-Life 2 marking a milestone in PC gaming. But let's not forget the truly impressive modifications. Counter-Strike and Team Fortress were born from the modding community of Half-Life, right?
Yes, Andrew. And multiplayer mods like those literally reshaped the gaming landscape. The developers' recognition and embrace of these modifications enhanced the gaming experience and also the player's sense of ownership. It's a testament to the influential legacy of Half-Life.
Half-Life. Now there's a blast from the past. Reflecting on its legacy, Mia, we invariably talk about its influences on game culture. It's almost as if it has become a benchmark for video games. The game's groundbreaking mechanics have become industry standards today. Do you recall?
Absolutely, Andrew. Its indelible mark is apparent even today. In fact, the physics-based puzzles, the interactive environment that Half-Life introduced, have been mirrored and evolved in countless succeeding games. It's as if every time I spot a physics-based puzzle in a game, I think, okay, that's a nod to Half-Life right there.
Ripples from the impact, like a stone cast into the peaceful waters of a pond. Then there's the mystery of the Freeman. Narrative storytelling has taken a page out of Half-Life's book, embracing the silent protagonist trope. You have to admit, it adds an element of intrigue, pulls you in.
Oh, it certainly does. It's almost like the game has gifted future games a new language to tell their stories. It's not just about the mechanics or the narrative, it's also the community it spawned. Passionate, engaging, creative, that pushed boundaries with their mods.
Right. And who can forget the awards? We're talking over 50 Game of the Year awards. That's something, isn't it? It's a testament to the game's impact on players and the industry alike. Sort of a universal endorsement of this is how games ought to be. These awards certainly played a role, don't you think, Mia?
They considerably did, Andrew. They underscored the excellence of Half-Life's gameplay and narrative, setting a high bar for future games. The accolades painted a clear picture of the players' love and industry's respect for Half-Life. It's fascinating, really. Honoring one game created ripple effects, prompting innovation and growth throughout the industry.
You're absolutely right. A game isn't merely about being fun. It's about pushing the medium, creating new ways to engage, innovate, and express. So, in essence, the legacy of Half-Life is still going strong, still making waves in the way we shape our narratives and game mechanics.